Welcome to our deep dive into personal effectiveness.
Ooh.
Today we're exploring Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People,
Okay.
a book you specifically requested. And I can see why. We've
Yeah.
got excerpts from both the original and updated versions,
Cool.
which is really cool because we can actually trace how Covey's thinking evolved over time.
Yeah.
It's like having a window into his process,
Yeah.
seeing how he refined these ideas that resonated with so many people.
Exactly.
And our mission today is to distill those core principles, the
Thank
ones
you.
that truly struck a chord,
Yeah.
and see if they still hold up in our world today.
A world that feels a lot different than when Covey first wrote the book, wouldn't you say?
You got that right. I mean, think about the pace of life now,
Oh, yeah.
the constant distractions.
Right.
It's almost like we need Covey's wisdom more than ever.
Absolutely.
And speaking of wisdom, where better to start than with Covey's concept of paradigms?
Yeah.
It's the foundation of his entire approach.
Okay.
He's basically saying the way we see the world shapes our experiences, right? It's
Yeah.
like that optical illusion he uses in the book, the
Right.
one with the old woman and the young lady.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on how you look at it, you see something completely different.
Precisely.
But here's what's fascinating.
Yeah.
Most of the time, we're not even aware of the paradigms we're operating from.
Right.
They're like these unconscious filters
Mhm.
shaping our perceptions, our decisions, our entire reality.
Yeah. It's kind of freaky when you think about it.
Like, what if my whole worldview is based on a faulty paradigm?
It happens.
Really?
And that's why Covey stresses the importance of examining our paradigms,
Okay.
of challenging our assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
He wants us to become aware of the mental maps we're using to navigate life.
That makes total sense because if you're working off a bad map,
Right.
you're never going to reach your destination, are you?
Nope.
Speaking of destinations, Covey talks a lot about the difference between the character ethic and the personality ethic.
Oh.
And I have to admit, this one really hit home for me.
It's a distinction that often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
But it's crucial for understanding Covey's philosophy.
Okay.
He argues that true success and fulfillment stem from character,
Mm-hmm.
from integrity, honesty, fairness,
Yeah.
rather than from superficial techniques or quick fixes.
Yeah. He tells this great story about trying to coach his son in baseball.
Oh, yeah.
And at first, he was all about winning, pushing his son to be the best. But then he realized he was focusing on the outcome, not the process.
Right.
And it was actually damaging their relationship.
It's a classic example of the personality ethic in action.
Oh.
We get so fixated on achieving a certain result
Yeah.
that we neglect the underlying principles that truly matter.
I've totally been there.
Yeah.
Like obsessing over getting a promotion instead of focusing on developing my skills and becoming a better leader.
It's a common trap.
Yeah.
But Covey's point is that lasting success comes from building our character, from living in alignment with our values. And that takes time, patience, and a willingness to focus on the process, not just the outcome.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah,
But how do we actually put this into practice?
that's a great question.
How do we move from the personality ethic to the character ethic?
That's where the 7 habits come in.
Okay.
They provide a framework for developing those core principles that Covey believed were essential for effectiveness.
So the habits themselves are like tools for building character.
Precisely. They're like practices that help us cultivate integrity, fairness, honesty, and all those other qualities that contribute to true success.
All right, let's dig into those habits then. What's the first one?
Habit 1 is be proactive.
Okay.
And this one, it's all about taking responsibility for our own lives, recognizing that we have the power to choose our responses.
Wait, so it's not just about being busy and getting things done.
No, it goes much deeper than that.
Okay.
It's about understanding that we're not victims of circumstance. We have the freedom to choose how we react, even in difficult situations.
Covey has this whole concept of the circle of influence, right?
Yeah.
Where we focus on what we can control rather than dwelling on what we can't.
Exactly. It's a powerful shift in perspective.
Oh.
Instead of feeling overwhelmed by everything that's outside our control,
Right.
we direct our energy towards those areas where you can make a difference.
Okay.
Our own thoughts, our actions, our attitude.
It's like taking back control, focusing on what we can actually change instead of feeling helpless.
Yeah.
I like that it's empowering.
Mm.
And that actually reminds me of something you mentioned earlier. We were talking about the fast-paced, distracting world we live in today.
Oh, right.
Do you think Covey's idea of proactivity is even more relevant now?
Absolutely. We're bombarded with information demands and expectations from all directions.
Well, yeah.
It's easy to feel reactive, to get swept away by the current. But Covey would argue that it's precisely in these times that we need to double down on proactivity,
Okay.
to consciously choose our responses and focus on what truly matters.
Otherwise, we just become puppets, right?
Yeah.
Reacting to whatever's thrown at us. I'm starting to see how this all connects.
Yeah.
It's like Covey's laying the groundwork, preparing us to take ownership of our lives before we even dive into the other habits.
Precisely. Proactivity is the foundation. It's the first step towards becoming truly effective.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we have the power to choose our response, even when things feel chaotic.
That's a pretty powerful idea, especially in the world we're living in today.
It is, and it leads nicely into the next habit, habit 2,
Okay.
which builds on this idea of conscious choice.
Okay, habit 2, what's that all about?
Habit 2 is begin with the end in mind.
Ooh, I like that one. It's about setting goals, right?
It's about much more than just goals. Covey asks us to imagine our own funeral,
Ugh.
to think about what we want people to say about our lives.
Whoa, that got dark fast, but I get it.
Yeah.
It's about defining what truly matters to us, right?
Exactly. It's about identifying our core values, our deepest aspirations,
Mm-hmm.
and then using those as a compass to guide our decisions and actions.
So it's like having a blueprint for the life we want to build.
Precisely. And Covey believes that by having that blueprint,
Yeah.
by consciously choosing our destination,
Mm-hmm.
we become more intentional in our daily choices.
It's like knowing where you're going makes it a lot easier to figure out how to get there.
And it helps you stay on track when you inevitably encounter obstacles or distractions along the way.
Okay, so we've got proactivity, choosing our response,
Yeah.
and we've got beginning with the end in mind, having a clear vision for our lives. What's next?
That leads us to one of Covey's most memorable analogies,
Okay.
and that's the PPC balance.
Okay.
He compares it to a goose that lays golden eggs.
The goose and the golden eggs. Okay, that's definitely one I remember. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
The PPC balance is all about effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
The golden eggs represent the desired outcomes, the things we want to achieve,
Okay.
and the goose represents our ability to produce those outcomes.
So it's not just about getting the golden eggs, it's about making sure the goose is healthy and can keep laying them right.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Covey argues that this principle applies to so many areas of life, not just work or business.
Yeah, wow.
It's about relationships, our health, our personal growth.
Give me an example. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around how this applies to, say, relationships.
Imagine you're constantly demanding attention and validation from your partner without giving anything back.
Okay.
You might be getting those golden eggs of reassurance and affection in the short term,
Mm-hmm.
but you're neglecting the goose, the emotional connection that sustains the relationship.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
So by focusing on the goose being supportive, communicative, showing appreciation,
right.
you're actually creating a foundation for those golden eggs to keep coming naturally.
Precisely. And the same principle applies to our health. If you're constantly pushing yourself to the limit, neglecting sleep, exercise, and healthy eating, you might be achieving those golden eggs of productivity and success in the short term.
Mm-hmm.
But you're depleting the goose, your physical and mental well-being, which will eventually catch up with you.
Wow, I'm starting to see how this PPC balance thing can really shift your perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just about chasing those immediate results.
Right.
It's about creating a sustainable system that can keep producing those results in the long run.
Exactly. It's about thinking long-term, investing in the things that matter most, even if it means delaying gratification in the short term.
That's a tough one, especially in our instant gratification culture.
Oh, yeah.
But I can see how it would be worth it in the end.
It is, and it's a concept that Covey weaves throughout all 7 habits.
Okay.
It's about effectiveness in every aspect of our lives.
Okay, we've covered the first 3 habits.
Yeah,
They feel like they're all about personal development, becoming more self-aware, and taking control of our own lives. But
Right.
what about how we interact with others?
that's where the next 4 habits come into play.
Okay.
Covey calls them the public victory because they focus on building strong, effective relationships.
Public victory.
Right.
I like that. So it's like once you've mastered the personal stuff,
Yeah,
you can start applying those principles to your interactions with others.
exactly. And the foundation of this public victory is habit 4, think win-win.
Win-win. It sounds pretty straightforward. Isn't that just about finding solutions that benefit everyone involved?
It's more nuanced than that.
Oh,
Covey argues that most people approach negotiations or conflicts with a win-lose mentality.
okay.
They're either trying to get their way or they're giving in to the other person.
So it's like a competition who can get the bigger slice of the pie.
Precisely. But Covey challenges us to expand the pie, to find solutions where everyone benefits.
Okay.
He believes that with creativity and collaboration, we can often find a third alternative, something that neither party could have imagined on their own.
I'm thinking back to that PPC balance. Is there a connection there?
Absolutely. I think win-win is all about valuing the goose,
Okay.
the relationship, the long-term collaboration, as much as the golden eggs, the immediate outcomes.
So it's not just about getting what you want in the moment. It's about creating a foundation for trust and mutual benefit that can sustain the relationship over time.
Exactly. And that leads us to habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Yeah.
This one is all about communication, about truly listening to and empathizing with the other person.
I can already see how this builds on habit 4. If you're trying to find a win-win solution, you need to really understand where the other person's coming from, right?
Precisely. But Covey goes deeper than just active listening.
Okay.
He introduces the concept of empathic listening, which is about putting yourself in the other person's shoes, seeing the world through their eyes.
Okay. Empathic listening, that sounds challenging. I'm a pretty good listener, but how do you actually do that? How do you truly understand someone else's perspective?
Covey breaks it down into 4 stages. The first is mimic content, which is simply repeating back what the other person said to ensure you've heard them correctly.
Okay, that's basic, but important. You're showing that you're paying attention.
All right. Then there's rephrase the content, which is putting what they've said into your own words to demonstrate that you're going beyond just hearing the words and actually trying to grasp their meaning.
So you're not just parroting them, you're showing that you're actively processing what they're saying.
Exactly. The third stage is reflect the feeling, which is where empathy really comes into play.
Yeah, okay.
It's about acknowledging the emotions behind the words, identifying and verbalizing what the other person is feeling.
This is where you start to connect on a deeper level, right? It's not just about the facts, it's about the feelings behind the facts.
Precisely. And the fourth stage is rephrase the content and reflect the feeling, which combines the previous 2 stages.
Okay.
It's the highest level of empathic listening because it shows a deep understanding of both the content and the emotions being communicated.
Wow, that's a lot to process. I'm starting to realize how much work goes into truly understanding someone else. No wonder we have so many communication breakdowns.
It's not easy, but Covey believed that empathic listening is essential for building trust, resolving conflicts, and creating win-win solutions.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with a genuine desire to find solutions that benefit everyone, that's when synergy happens.
Synergy, that's habit 6, right?
It is, and it's one of Covey's most powerful concepts.
Okay.
He defines synergy as a creative process where the whole becomes greater than the sum of his parts.
So it's like 1 + 1 = 3?
It's more than that.
Okay.
It's about valuing differences, respecting diverse perspectives, and finding solutions that neither party could have come up with on their own.
It sounds a lot like brainstorming, but on a much deeper level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it requires a certain level of maturity, a willingness to let go of ego, and really listen to and appreciate other people's ideas.
Okay, so we've got think, win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood and synergize. Those are some pretty powerful habits for building strong relationships. I can see how they all build on each other, creating this foundation for collaboration and mutual benefit. But what about self-care? Where does that fit in?
That's where habit 7 comes in, sharpen the saw.
Sharpen the saw. That one always sounds a bit strange to me. What does it actually mean?
It's all about renewal.
Okay.
Covey argues that to be truly effective, we need to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually.
Okay, that makes more sense. It's like you can't keep giving and giving without replenishing your own energy, right?
Precisely. And Covey breaks it down into 4 dimensions.
Okay.
The physical dimension is about caring for our bodies through exercise, nutrition, and stress management.
That one's pretty straightforward.
Right. The spiritual dimension is about connecting with our core values, finding meaning and purpose in life.
So it's about nurturing our inner selves, finding that sense of peace and connection that goes beyond the material world.
Yes, exactly. The mental dimension is about expanding our minds through learning, reading, writing, and engaging in stimulating conversations.
Keeping those brain cells firing.
Precisely. And finally, the social-emotional dimension is about building strong, healthy relationships with others, nurturing our emotional well-being, and fostering a sense of belonging.
It's interesting that he includes social and emotional well-being under Sharpen the Saw. It feels like it connects back to those public victory habits we were just talking about.
It does. Covey believed that all the habits are interconnected.
Yeah.
They work together to create a virtuous cycle.
Mm-hmm.
By taking care of ourselves, we become more effective in our interactions with others.
Right.
And by building strong relationships, we enhance our own well-being.
It's like this beautiful feedback loop.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of Covey's most profound insights. The idea that between stimulus and response, there is a space.
The space, what does he mean by that?
He's talking about the gap between an event and our reaction to that event. Most people react instinctively based on their conditioning, their past experiences, their emotional triggers.
So it's like that knee-jerk reaction we all have when something unexpected happens?
Precisely. But Covey argues that in that gap, however small it may be, lies our freedom to choose our response.
Our freedom to choose, I'm not sure I follow.
He's saying that we're not puppets controlled by our circumstances. We have the power to pause, to reflect, to consider our options, and to choose a response that aligns with our values and our goals.
Whoa, that's a pretty radical idea. So it's like we have this built-in pause button that we can use to override our automatic responses.
Exactly. And the more we practice using that pause button, the more intentional and effective we become.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually do that? How do we train ourselves to pause and choose a more conscious response, especially when we're in the heat of the moment?
That's where all the other habits come in. They provide the tools and the framework for developing that self-awareness, that emotional intelligence, that ability to choose our response rather than simply reacting.
So it's like those habits are building our capacity to access that space between stimulus and response to become more intentional, more proactive, more in control of our own lives.
Precisely, and that's the essence of Covey's message. He believed that we all have the potential to become highly effective individuals, but it takes conscious effort, it takes practice, it takes a commitment to living by these principles.
Wow, this deep dive has really opened my eyes to the depth and complexity of Covey's work. It's so much more than just a self-help book. It's a philosophy, a way of life.
It is, and it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
Covey never claimed to have all the answers.
Yeah.
He was a lifelong learner, constantly evolving, refining his ideas, and challenging himself to grow.
It's inspiring, really, knowing that even someone like Covey, who dedicated his life to studying effectiveness, was still on his own journey of growth and discovery.
It speaks to the humility at the heart of his work. He recognized that we're all works in progress, constantly learning, adapting, and evolving.
And that's really freeing, isn't it? It takes the pressure off needing to be perfect and allows us to focus on progress, on taking those small steps forward, on becoming a little bit better each day.
Exactly. It's about embracing the process, the journey, the ups and downs that come with being human.
And it makes me think about Covey's emphasis on principles. He believed that true effectiveness was rooted in living in alignment with those timeless principles: fairness, integrity, honesty, respect, service, and so on.
He saw those principles as universal laws, as true and constant as gravity. And he believed that by understanding and living in harmony with those laws, we could create a more fulfilling and meaningful life for ourselves and for others.
It's like those principles are the compass that guides us through the complexities of life.
Precisely, they provide a stable foundation,
Yeah.
a sense of direction, especially in times of uncertainty and change.
Which feels particularly relevant today, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. In a world that's constantly shifting, where technology is advancing at an unprecedented rate, where values seem to be in flux, those principles become even more important.
They provide a sense of grounding, a moral compass that can help us navigate those choppy waters.
And they empower us to become leaders, not just in the traditional sense, but in our own lives, in our families, in our communities.
Covey believed that anyone who truly embraced the 7 habits, anyone who committed to living by those principles, became a leader regardless of their title or position.
Because leadership, at its core, is about influence. It's about inspiring others to live up to their highest potential. And that's what the 7 habits are all about, empowering individuals to become the best versions of themselves to make a positive difference in the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what's one thing that stood out to you from exploring Covey's work? What's one insight or takeaway that you'll carry with you?
For me, it's that space between stimulus and response. That realization that we have the power to choose our response even in the most challenging circumstances is incredibly empowering. It's a reminder that we're not victims of our circumstances. We're not puppets controlled by our emotions. We have agency. We have choice.
I love that that's a powerful takeaway. And for me, it's the interconnectedness of the habits. They're not just a list of tips or techniques. They're a framework for living a more effective and fulfilling life.
They build on each other, reinforcing and amplifying each other's impact. And they work together to create a virtuous cycle of growth, contribution, and well-being.
Well said. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as I have.
Covey's work is a gift that keeps on giving, and I encourage you to revisit these principles often, to explore them in depth, to find what resonates with you, and to experiment with applying them to your own life.
And remember, the 7 habits are not a destination. They're a journey, a lifelong process of learning, growing, and becoming.
So keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to become the best version of yourself.
Thanks for listening.